Hey, welcome back to the Hotel Orloff here in scenic rural Retreat, Virginia. And today we're going to be talking about Gold Key Comics and Dell Comics. And hey, it's Monday, possibly June 26th, 25th, something like that. And TGIM, thank God it's Monday. Monday's everybody's favorite day, right, ladies and gentlemen? So, Gold Key and Dell. Well, what I remember as a kid, Gold Key was ever present on the comic book spinner rack. And there were a few Dells. You know, it was a different company. But further back, before my time, they were tied together, more kind of as one company, sort of. So I'll kind of tell you the history of all of that stuff that as best as I've determined as we go through these comics that I'm about to go through. I'm going to look through my Gold Key and Dell collection, which I've separated out from the rest of the comics, and kind of got inspired because a friend of the show, Kevin Johnson, who's the proprietor of Gotham City Comics in Mesa, Arizona, just recently had a customer come in and sell. That customer, he was pushing 50. He said, I've got some comics my mom used to read. And so he wound up with boxes and boxes and boxes of Dell comics and a few other publishers, mainly Dell from the early 50s, late 40s. And Dell, I think 13% is what I've read of the comics titles coming out like in the early to mid 50s were Dell, but they had a third of the market. That's how much they were selling, because they had Disney comics, and they had all this popular stuff. They were doing Western comics based on TV series and movies and John Wayne and all kinds of. It was the most wholesome comic. I mean, it was the comic that if your mom went to the newsstand and was going to buy you some comics, she would probably pick up Dell comics. Or birthing person, for those of you that are triggered by the use of the word mom or mother. If your birthing person would tend to buy Dell. Here's Alvin. So let me tell you I said so. Yeah, I hate that. Anyway, here's the first one I've got in here. Do I have enough light? This is based not on the Addams Family TV show, but on the Hanna-Barbera Addams Family cartoon that was on around, what was it, about 72? Okay, let's see if we can get oriented to get better light. Oh, my gosh. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Gold Key. Well, okay, we'll talk. Let me give you a quick little lesson as best as I can remember it. Okay, so Dell published comics between 1929 and like 1974 when Dell was a company that published a lot of things, not just comics. They published paperbacks, and they were a lot of things I remember as a kid had that Dell imprint on them, coloring books, a lot of things. But what happened is Dell started publishing comics like in 1929, and they were behind what a lot of people everyone considers really the first comic book, which was, what was it, Famous Funnies or something like that. I mean, basically, I'm trying to get this darn camera mounted correctly. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's very difficult here. We don't have a very good budget here on this network, but at least we got the camera straight now. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Dell starts. It was putting out comics that were reprints of comics that were printed in the newspaper, not original material. In I think around 1938, Dell partners with Western Publishing. And Dell says, okay, you provide us comic book content. You put the comics together. We'll finance it. We'll pay for it, and we'll distribute them with our big distribution network to the stores where people will buy it. So Western was the company that was going to make the books, and then Dell was going to pay for it and distribute it, right? So they're tied together. In 1962, Western decides, we're making these comics. Why don't we just pay for and distribute them ourselves, and we're going to divorce ourselves from Dell, and we'll form a new company called Gold Key. So when Gold Key formed in 62, they took a lot of their licenses, things, comics based on Tarzan and Disney and all that, and it left Dell still publishing comics, but and a lot of the creative talent went with Gold Key. So Dell was now a smaller comic book company, and they put out books. I remember there was a comic I used to buy sometimes when I was like 5 called Ghost Stories, but it never looked as cool as Gold Key, because what Gold Key did is they paid for these beautiful painted covers. The interior art was usually, not always, but usually kind of lackluster, but the covers were painted like old pulps from the old days. And anyway, so Dell wound up puttering and going out of business in 1974. Gold Key kept going till the late, then they started losing, but Gold Key started losing some of its licenses. Gold Key was doing the Hanna-Barbera characters, and they lost most of those to Charlton in 1970. They were doing, they had the King Features characters, which are like Popeye and Flash Gordon, and they had, the Phantom, Mandrake, who am I leaving out? Anyway, they lost those characters to Charlton, or I think around 1966. So Gold Key was starting to lose some of their, they still had Disney. But what happened to Gold Key was the comic book store market started, and they started to do this direct distribution to the comic stores, right? Because if this comic book didn't sell, it was returnable. So if the 7-Eleven, whatever, this didn't sell, they would tear off the top of the cover, send it back, and they'd get credit for, this was a 25-cent book, so they probably paid half of that. They'd get their 12, 13 cents back, and there was no money out. But when comic stores opened, they were directly distributed. So if a comic book store got this book, they would pay their 12 cents. And then if it didn't sell, well, they were stuck with the book. And hopefully at some point in the future, this would become a valuable book. But in the meantime, it would stay in their back room, or they put it out in for someone to buy it cheap or whatever. Anyway, Gold Key that didn't work for Gold Key. Gold Key decided, because the spinner rack market started to dry up, so they started packaging their books, and only at the very end of Gold Key's life, which I think they went till the early 80s, 83, I don't know. But the only way you could get Gold Key comics at that point was in a bag, in a department store, in a toy store. They were no longer sold as individual copies. They tried to get the Gold Key comics into comic stores because they realized they had stuff that appealed to collectors, like they could reprint the Carl Barks, Uncle Scrooge, Donald Duck comics that collectors liked, and they knew they had something. Anyway, it all went bust, and then some of the Gold Key original characters later came back when they started Valiant Comics in the early 90s, and they were even turned into video games and had a second life. But with that generation, which is not my generation, and I didn't think those comics were as appealing, but that Magnus Robot Fighter, Turok, Son of Stone, and Dr. Solar, maybe. I think maybe Valiant had Dr. Solar. But anyway, Gold Key has been dead many years. Someone has bought the rights to the Gold Key name, and it's a group of people in Arizona, and I think they're putting out a new Gold Key comic soon, which is based on the Boris Karloff comic, and that'll be out soon. Whether they can recapture that, I don't know. I'm gonna be right back, Liz. Hold on. Oh boy. Anyway, so Gold Key Comics. Let me turn the sound down on the TV. It's gonna upset something. Here, let me take the camera with me. It's not good content for me to be just ignoring the viewer. If I was professional, I would stop the camera and then I would edit this part out, but I don't know how to do that on this phone. Sorry, there was a dog accident. I smelled it horribly, and I must clean this up. So, anyway, that's what I remember about Gold Key as a kid. It's like the artwork inside was always kind of, a lot of times, kind of horrible, and the covers were great. Unless it was Magnus Robot Fighter, you had Russ Manning doing that, and there were some good artists, but you know, generally it was not the best. Oh my gosh. So how are you guys doing on this wonderful Monday? It's a beautiful thunderstormy day here. Supposed to be getting a hurricane tonight. Carpet cleaner, ladies and gentlemen. Our new sponsor. Anyway, I have two purposes for what I'm doing. Is there's a lot of these books, man, they're so great that Gotham City Comics got in, and it's kind of just, inspired me to look at my Gold Key and Dells, my pathetic collection of Gold Key and Dells, and see what I got. So I'll be going through the Gold Key and Dell comics, and then I'll go through the Disney comics, which I haven't done in a while. So how are you guys doing? Doing pretty well, huh? How's your back? How's your back doing? Doing pretty good. Well, it's good to hear that you guys are doing well. That's fantastic. I shouldn't be watching the AJ show while I'm filming my show, because I'm sure if the AI picks up his voice, because we don't live in a free country anymore, that will be bad. And I talk about it sometimes. My wife reminded me, you're not supposed to mention his name on social media. They made that against the rules. And I said, oh, that's right. I forgot about that. So no wonder they, either the fact that the content of this network is incredibly boring, it's probably, and the presentation, like me spending 10 minutes cleaning up dog poop, maybe that might cause people to not like this channel or my personality or whatever, my politics or whatever. But so why is and in fact I've lost 3 subscribers recently, so I'll never break 1,000. I've resigned myself to that. But it's very possible that YouTube takes subscribers away as punishment for not thinking correctly. But we always wondered what it would be like to live in Cuba, and now we're getting a taste of it, huh? With this wonderful Biden administration. Although he's a great president, I have to say, he's doing a great job. Yes, indeed. But Gold Key, let's speak, because we don't want to talk about politics here. We only talk about comic books on this channel. I'm having to whisper because I don't want to be heard talking about that stuff, ladies and gentlemen. It seemed like we used to have freedom, but back in the old days, I don't know, maybe we didn't. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to Gold Key. Oh, I'm gonna wash my hands first. Okay, so how are you guys doing today? How's your back? You have a headache? Did you eat good breakfast? I had 4 Pop-Tarts that were very nutritious and delicious, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, I still have this hole in the wall. I need to figure out it. I don't know how to do sheetrock, so that hole will probably remain until I can figure out how to afford to have someone help me with it. But I guess I could hang a tapestry over it. Yeah. Yep. Well, the main drain line for the plumbing system was World War I era, and it had a little bit of a leak, which was causing some mold to come through the wall, so that had to be eliminated. Okay. All right. Well, Gold Key. Oh man, come on, man. Oh boy, oh man. All right. Okay. Come on. There we go. Yes, very good. Excellent. Fantastic. All right, so Addams Family. Pretty great cover. Getting shadows. Not acceptable. Let's move this ladder a little bit. See, I've got a step ladder here, and I've mounted the camera with this little tripod onto the camera, onto the ladder. Okay, that's better. All right, Addams Family. All right, amazing. Maybe that ring light's too close now. Oh my goodness. Oh well. Addams Family. That's Addams Family number 3. Here's Dell. Now, this is after Gold Key split away from Dell. So, early 60s. Around the World Under the Sea. Dell. It's a movie I've never seen. It's like you've got Ilya Kuryakin in it, David McCallum. You've got, that's probably Yvette Mimo. I don't know. You seen that movie? Tell me about it. Okay, here's Dell, Barbie, and Ken. Dell, Beanie, and Cecil. Beanie and Cecil started as a puppet show on a local TV in Los Angeles. Stan Freberg did some of the voices. Produced by Bob Clampett. They turned it into a cartoon later. The reason, of course, that's why you never see the bottom part of Cecil, the seasick sea serpent, because he was always a puppet. You never saw the bottom part because of someone's hand was... Okay, here is something that we need to talk about. You know, I said that, okay, Western Publishing had an imprint of Whitman that they used for coloring books and things. And what they would do in the 70s, and this one is probably my childhood copy. It's a Gold Key book. Here's another copy of the same issue. This was sold on newsstands as an individual copy. But they would also, same press run, so they aren't second printings, they aren't reprints. The Overstreet Guide said they were reprints back in the 70s. They were wrong. It caused a lot of people to just think Whitman's were trash, and they threw them away. They just figured that it was a reprint. This Roadrunner comic's not worth that much anyway, and it's a reprint. And now it's come out, no, they were original printing. At a certain point in the press run, they would cover up this element with that, and it's still from the first printing. So now these are considered actually more desirable to some people, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, more valuable. Of course, telling people they were worthless for a while caused a lot of them to disappear from the market, and although these comics sold a lot. Let me tell you, Dell, see, these are comics that parents approved. Dell comics in the mid-50s were selling like 25 million copies a month. I don't know if that's how many total comics they sold, or if they had certain titles that sold. They were selling astronomical amounts, which is why this collection that Kevin Johnson, Mesa, Arizona's famous comic store, Gotham City Comics, he just purchased this collection, and it's mostly Dell's, because I think in the stores they probably predominated, or at least that was what appealed to this particular little girl back in the early 50s. Okay, so basically, this comic sold for 15 cents. So I guess maybe the store paid 7 cents or something like that. And then depends on what cut they got. And then they sold it for 15 cents, and then they made a profit. But they're not making much money. They're making pennies. So that's why the comic price, one of the reasons the comic prices kept going up, it wasn't just that the price of paper was getting more expensive in the 70s, it was that a lot of stores said, "Oh, we don't want comics in our store, they don't make enough money." Originally, when they sold really well in the 50s, you had a rack of comics. It drew all the kids in. But there was no competition. Your only competition for comics was the movie theater and early television. But, you know, as you got into the late 70s, you had competition for video games and everything. And comics were less of something that attracted kids. And if you attracted the kids in, then the parents would follow, and then they would buy more expensive things. So they're like a loss leader. The comics brought families in who bought the more expensive things that really made the profit for your store. So they weren't making that. So anyway, point is, this comic, if it didn't sell, the store owner would rip off the top, or sometimes the whole cover, send that back, so they don't have to pay as much postage as if they sent the whole book back, and they would get their money back. Some companies like Warren, that put out Famous Monsters, Creepy, Eerie, Vampirella, and I'll be showing some Vampirella soon this week, they would want the whole book back, and then they would be able to sell it in their back issue department in the back of the comics. And then, of course, later when Warren went belly up, you'd go to the comic conventions and there'd be giant stacks of Creepy number 15. They were a warehouse find, a warehouse because they were the unsold copies. And so all of a sudden, all these mint or close to mint copies became available of a lot of those books. So there was a lot of them that hit the market in the 80s, I think, when that happened. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. But anyway, there's a lot of them out there. Anyway, so you could return that. But if it has this mark, that means it was sold in a 3-pack. And sold in a 3-pack, it would be in plastic, and there'd be a little thing here that you'd hang on the little pegboard, peg stick, right, little hole in it. And it'd say 3 comics for, well, I remember it was like 3 comics for 75 cents, but I don't know what they would have sold them back when they were 15 cents. They were, you get a discount by buying 3 comics, right? There'd be 1 comic here, and then you'd flip it around and see some other comic, and then there'd be one in the middle, and you'd have to kind of move the plastic a little bit to kind of see what that book is. But anyway, they weren't meant to be, some store owners could open up the package and return the book for credit, but not if it has the Western imprint on it. That means this came out of one of those 3-packs. You opened it up. You're trying to get money from us. That's wrong. It's supposed to be sold as a 3-pack. And the 3-packs were also sold in places where comics weren't sold, like department stores and toy stores and places like that. So anyway, I just happen to have 2 copies of this, and I think this is my childhood copy, because the other one is that's not, I treated my comics well, and that one is in too ragged a shape. I think I bought that just because I remember. I saw it in a quarter bin. February of 72, man, so that's my first grade year this came out. Beep Beep the Roadrunner, which I have filed not under R, but I have it filed under B, because technically I think it is part of the title, Beep Beep. So I file it under B because I'm, I guess, anal retentive that way. Here's Adele. Not that singer. Isn't there a singer named Adele? Adele comic. Beetle Bailey. Look how hilarious that is. The hard-bitten Sarge has got a teddy bear. All brand new story. This is older. See, it's still 10 cents, so I'd put it probably very early 60s. Here's Gold Key. I have a couple of copies of this. The adaptation of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the second Planet of the Apes movie from about 1970. The original came out in 68. you always see that it has a 8 protest poster, and it's like chimpanzees marching around with protest posters. It looks very much like the hippies of the 60s. But anyway, it always says 8 protest poster. You never find the poster in there. Kids took it out because it looked cool on the wall. So there's another copy in better shape, but this one doesn't have the poster either. Some of those books that were just obtained by Kevin at Gotham City Comics, they have posters in them, and it's just like Myra and I both said at the same time, they never have the posters. But that little girl was very nice to her comics. Here's an adaptation. It's the Blue Phantom. I don't know if this was a movie or what. I don't think it was. I think this might be an original adaptation, original thing for Dell. I could be wrong. He and his blue-clad riders struck with the fury of a summer storm, then disappeared as silently as a ghostly wind-blown mist. I could look this up and see if the Blue Phantom was a movie. I don't think so, but I can't right now because I'm using my phone to record this. Actually, my wife's tablet's over there, but that would require me moving 6 feet, and we here in America don't like doing that. Okay, so Boris Karloff, Tales of Mystery. This is the book that's going to be revived when Gold Key comes back later this year, early next year. I don't know when they're going to. They had a Kickstarter, and it was funded very quickly. Anyway, Boris Karloff had a TV series called Thriller, where he hosted it, kind of like Rod Serling hosted Twilight Zone, and Alfred Hitchcock, was the host of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And Boris Karloff had become famous again because in the early 60s, when this TV show was on the air, because of Famous Monsters of Filmland, doing all these articles about the old movie stars like Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney. Forrest J. Ackerman caused 8, 9, 10-year-old boys and girls to know who these people were from their parents' generation. Let's see, possibly even grandparents' generation with Lon Chaney. In the late 50s, early 60s, Monster Explosion. Bobby Boris Pickett had a hit with the Monster Mash in 62. And he had this hit song that you could do the mash to, the mashed potato, which was a popular dance at the time. And he did it with a perfect imitation of Boris Karloff's voice. So Boris Karloff suddenly had some notoriety and started doing some movies there in the 60s with AIP, Roger Corman's company, and even some movies down in Mexico. The cool thing about this era, early 60s, they'd have the art without the logo. And this, some people call it the trade dress. The trade dress means the overall look. Like, I look at this, I can immediately tell it's a Gold Key comic. The logo's part of the trade dress, but where they put that, Gold Key with a little key, where they have the price, the way they have the font, and the painted cover, I immediately identify it as a Gold Key comic. Just like if I could recognize a Coke can if it was laying in the gutter a block from here. Well, maybe I couldn't. Maybe my eyes aren't as good as they used to. But you can immediately tell, oh, it's a red and white can. It's Coke. That's the trade dress. That's the way it's dressed up to be, sold. You immediately recognize the color, the red, the white cursive. Even if it's print, if you go to Africa or you go to Honduras, there's a Coke can. It might be a different language, different letters, but you can say, oh, it's still cursive. Oh, that's a Coke can, even though it's in another language. Anyway, Boris Karloff, Tales of Mystery. So Gold Key did a lot of adaptation, and Dell did a lot of adaptation. This is after Gold Key split away from Dell and formed their own company, obviously, in 62. So this is one of the early Gold Key comics. Boris Karloff's show was called Thriller, and I think the first few comics were called that. But the show didn't last, but the comic kept going all to the 70s. I mean, after Boris Karloff had passed away, I think he died in 66, 67. Oh, the other thing he did in the 60s that all of you will remember is he was the narrator of the Grinch That Stole Christmas. Um, I always remember it as the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, and then it's like, no, it was actually, the book was called The Grinch That Stole Christmas. It was something like that, where it's like I never remembered exactly the way when I actually see the original Dr. Seuss book. It's like, oh, I've always remembered it slightly differently. Anyway, beautiful painted cover. A lot of these painted covers were done by a guy named George Wilson, which is funny. I always laugh about that because George Wilson was the neighbor that always was annoyed by Dennis the Menace in the comics. But another thing Gold Key didn't do in this time period is they didn't have advertisements, which I like the advertisements. The reason, see, the artwork inside is just not, it's not the same, on par with that. I liked advertisements, but see, the thing is, Gold Key, you notice there's no Comics Code Authority. Gold Key, and before that, Dell never put that code. They completely ignored that. Basically, the government, there were a lot of people upset about comic books being not suitable for kids in the early 50s. A lot of clamor. Comics getting too bloody, too gory, too salacious, too much cleavage, Jungle Girls, crime comics, comics glorifying crime and violence and torture and all this stuff that was never in the Dell comics or later the Gold Key comics. So parents were upset, teachers were upset. There were bonfires burning comics. The comic industry decided we need to clean up our act, because even the government was starting to look into it. They're having Senate subcommittee meetings and bringing in artists and publishers and writers and to testify before. And they said, hey, we're going to self-regulate, just like the motion picture industry had done back in 1933. They brought in the Hays Code. It's like all of a sudden, you go back to the silent movie era, you see people's heads being lopped off, you watch a biblical epic, Ben-Hur or something, the original silent version, you'll see topless women, you'll see, it's like things were, and then they said, wait a second, people are getting upset, so they cleaned up their act with the Hays Code. Movies were more safe. And in movies that came out right at the tail end, like King Kong, when they re-released it, they would cut parts of King Kong out, and they didn't add those scenes back in until the early 70s, because movies were trying to clean up their act. But by the 60s, movies started to get naughty again, and then they brought in a ratings code, GPG. Originally it was GP, then it became PG. R, and X, and X was never used except for like Midnight Cowboy and a couple of movies, and then it was taken over by something else. And PG-13 was added in the 80s because of that second Indiana Jones movie, and the second Indiana Jones movie, Temple of Doom, Poltergeist, and Gremlins, those three popular movies, being as extreme as they were, forced them to come up with a PG-13 rating, which is somewhere between PG and an R, because no one's going to say Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom should be an R-rated movie. Gremlins, no way should that be an R-rated movie. But, and Poltergeist, they're a little more extreme than a PG. Although if you think about it, PG was what Jaws was rated. But if PG-13 had been around, that's probably another movie that was going back a few years that caused the movie industry to come in with a PG-13. Look how I get off on this track about movies. I was talking about comics, but movies did the same thing. But anyway, Comics Code came in. Little seal you're not going to see today because I'm not showing you any of those. All these books aren't going to have that seal. They never went along with it. They said, hey, our comics are clean. We don't need to worry about that. Meyer was pointing out, Meyer Greenblatt, you should subscribe to him here on YouTube. He was pointing out to me that Dell was run pretty much by a woman named, I think, Helen Meyer, and she said Dell comics are good comics, and that became their slogan. And because these are not comics the parents have to worry about, and they never pushed anything too far. Here's another 1960s Boris Karloff Tales of Mystery. Another problem. Well, it's not a horrible problem, but you know, most comics tell you what the issue number on them. The Gold Key didn't do that. But Graphic Man, Micah, has an amazing system that I will teach you, but I didn't come up with it. He's figured out how to figure out when the comic came out. Not the issue number. You still have to open up here to the inside to find out the issue number. And this one is issue number, I think it says 18. And it says June. Oh, this is June 67. 67? Oh, I guess 67. I thought the back cover, being the pure, unaltered art, which I think today sometimes they'll put out comic covers without that. They call them virgin covers. Anyway, I thought that stopped around 64, but this is a 1967 comic still doing that. See what? Here's how you can. Man, I can't see. I don't have my magnifying glass down here. You see here the last three digits. It says 706. So you can immediately identify that as 1967 because of the 7, and 06 means June. And you say, well, how do you know 7 means 1967? I mean, why isn't it 57 or 77? You have to know a little about comics and their history to know that this 7 has to be 67. This is a 12-cent comic. So it's not hard to learn. Basically, comics were 10 cents, pretty much 10 cents unless they were a giant big edition. Sometimes that Dell would put out 15 or even a quarter, but sometimes the comics were as thick as phone books. We saw a few of those in the last couple of episodes if you've been watching. Anyway, I know it's 67 immediately because it's 12 cents. Comics went to 12 cents in the very end of 1961. And comics became 15 cents in 1968. So basically, a 12-cent book, I immediately know it's the 1960s. And then the comics were 15 cents from 68 to maybe late 1971, when they went to 20 cents. And then 25 cents, I know that's mid-70s, 1975. And then they went to 30 cents, I think, in 1976. And I think they went up to 35 cents right about the time Star Wars was coming out, 1977. I remember that because there was a price difference. I mean, some of the Star Wars #1 comics said 30 and some had 35. Isn't that the way it was? And then the comics just kept going up from there. But by then, you don't have to worry about Gold Key, because Gold Key was like late 70s. They stopped even having the painted covers a lot of time, and they were pretty much gone. They lost the Star Trek license in 79, I guess in 78, but they kept doing Star Trek comics until I think 79. Then Marvel took over and comics based on the new Star Trek the Motion Picture. Okay, so that's and this one you can look and see it says 509, so I know that's September of 65. So anyway, amazing. But that way you can tell when it came out without opening the bag. If you're looking in a comic store, you're not gonna be able to. Here's what I did. Look what I did here. This is back when VHS cassettes were out. They would have numbers on the little, they would give you a little sticker sheet with your VHS cassette. So you could put stickers, labeling stickers on the VHS cassette and also on its spine. And some people numbered their video cassettes. They'd give you numbers. So I put 2 3s there, and then I put tape over it back when this was, and I put it in this Mylite bag. So that shows you how old this bag is. I bought some Mylites at Lone Star Comics when they started selling them. I thought they were so great, and I guess everyone tells me I need to get Mylites too. I don't have any comic store to buy them at, but the comics that I put into these back in the early 80s or whenever they came out are still in those bags, and they still look nice. And some people will come on and they say, well, Gratu likes those Mylites bags. And it's not that I like them, it's just what they sold. And I thought, oh, that's better than the bags I've been using. And anyway, I don't know. So anyway, there's a evil monkey blasting people. Okay, so that's a 15-cent book. So what is it says 102. So that means 1971 February. And that would be right in line with what I just told you about. No, was I telling you? Yeah, that's the very end of the 15-cent era. Yeah. Okay, this one, these aren't in order. And see, that's 006. That means June of 1970. The summer of June of 70, man. This is right before I went into kindergarten. No, this is not my childhood copy. These are ones I bought later. We'll be coming up to my first Boris Karloff that I bought as a little kid. I loved horror comics as a kid. This is one that I haven't bagged and boarded yet. What does it say on there, man? I need more light. Good grief. 7, 12. That means, well, it's 12 cents, so it's December of 67. And yeah, I guess they did have the whole painting on the back in 1967. Well, the great thing about this, guys, if you think about it, you could take this to Kinko's, FedEx, whatever they call it now, lay it down on the glass. You can't ask them to do it because they'll say, that's copywritten. But if you could blow this into a poster and you could frame it if you're not married, probably, and put it on your wall. But anyway, you could have a whole gallery of amazing gold key art. These really are nice paintings. I mean, they really are. But, you go from that, look at how that looks, compared to how it looks inside. It's like, what? But it's sometimes they have little gag panels. It wasn't always bad on the inside, but that's my memory as a kid. It could be real bad. Anyway, I don't know how they're going to do the new Gold Key comics. The first comic they're starting with is a Boris Karloff comic. Question is, who is your target market? Is it people that are my age? Are you trying to get us to come back out of nostalgia for what we remember from when we were kids? Because unless someone's in their 50s, I can't imagine too many people being nostalgic for these Boris Karloff comics. Unless there are younger people that appreciate horror, that are into the old Universal horror, that love this, people into... there are cool people out there that are, that collect horror, these young tattooed people that are into heavy metal and punk rock, and they see by here they have an ad on the back. They're Gold Key went to ads at some point, and I like ads, so I gotta be happy. I see class of 72. My oldest brother was class of 72. Yes, indeed. This is 15 cent, 72, August of 72. So, anyway, I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, I mean, they're not gonna, I don't know what they're gonna do. This is my childhood copy, my first Boris Karloff. And let's date it. 72 June. Interesting. Okay, I have a very clear memory of buying this at the PX in Germany, Heidelberg. Now it's dated, okay, June of 72. We moved from Germany to Virginia in the summer of 72. But you got to remember, this is why it's important to know a little bit more about how dates work in comics. If it's dated June of 72, it really came out on the stands 2 months before June. So this really came out around the time of my birthday in April of 72. So I would have been, I guess, 7, being born in 1965. So this is my childhood copy that's been with me all these years, and see at the bottom it says by the estate of Boris Karloff, because he had passed away at that point. And I think he's the new Gold Key people. They've talked to the estate, whoever's in that family now. I remember he had a daughter, Sarah Karloff. I don't know if she's still around. Maybe she is, but I'm sure she had children, and they've authorized his likeness to be on this new Boris Karloff comic. But will it appeal? I mean, with the modern artist and everything, to me, you would need to have some artist of this magnitude on the front of a new Gold Key comic to sell it to someone like me. You'd have to bring in someone like Alex Ross or Steve Rude, which actually is an idea, because this Gold Key company is starting in Arizona, and I think Steve Rude, from what I understand, lives in Mesa, Arizona. They should approach him. Hey, paint us some covers, and we'll make it look just like Gold Key never ended. That would be fantastic. This one's 25 cents, which I always say is around 1975. And yeah, I'm right. 75, December 75, 5/12. So I don't know. You're learning something that you maybe did. An amazing trick that you can impress people, with. Now we're up to 35 cents. See, it's 8/12, so that's definitely 78, December of 78. Yes, indeed. Okay. 25 cents. It's July of 74. Now, Graphic Man has a video up. He shows every cover. He just recently completed the entire line, the run, whatever the current word people use. He got all of them, which now people say the entire run. That's great. 25 cents. This is August of 74. See, it says 408. See? Very good. Yes, indeed. Kind of weird. You pass away and you got your name on your name and face on the cover of the comic. There used to be a wax museum up by Niagara Falls in New York near the border, Boris Karloff Wax Museum, and I think that museum's still there. I think it's now just like the Castle of Frankenstein or something. I don't, but what I did see is someone was selling a pennant. Maybe I just saw it. If someone was selling it, seems like I would have made an effort to buy it. But it had a picture of Frankenstein. It said Boris Karloff Wax Museum or something like that. A little souvenir from that tourist trap. This one is also a childhood copy. 20 cents, 308. Well, that's the summer of 73. Summer of 73, we moved from Hampton, Virginia to San Antonio, Texas. If this was 8, it's really June of 73. I think I must have bought this in Virginia right as they were coming in to pack us up to move us to Texas. See, going through these comics, it's kind of like going back through a scrapbook of my life. This is another childhood copy. I remember the ones that I bought as a kid. Those other ones I bought later, as I found them over the years in my travels and journeys through comic book stores, wherever. This one's 20 cents. It's February 74. See, 402. Oh my goodness. 20 cents. This one's from April of 75. Let's go a little quicker. This one I must have gotten in a 3-pack. So how are you guys doing today? This is a wonderful day, isn't it? Going to get a hurricane later today. See how dark it's getting outside? Here's the problem. When it's a Whitman variant, they cover up the part of the Gold Key logo that has the numbers. So I'd have to open this up to know, but I know it's 30 cents, so I'm guessing it's around the time of the nation's 200th birthday, the bicentennial. And I wouldn't be surprised if this came in that same pack, this other issue, and not the same artist. You can tell this painting is not as good as what we've been looking at. Oh my gosh. These have the UPC code. That kind of like, the UPC code to me kind of ruined the look of the cover of comics, and then the direct distribution causing comics to not be seen by kids anymore. That was a real death knell for comics. They took the comics from the newsstand and moved them into only comic stores where most kids don't go. They go into 7-Elevens to buy chips and candy and bubble gum and drinks. They don't go into comic stores. They probably perceive that as a nerdy place. I mean, normal, average kids, not kids like us when we were kids. And then video games started coming into people's homes right before comics stopped being on spinner racks. And that 1-2 punch is what destroyed, in my opinion, the industry. Because to me, what's coming out now is not even really comic books. I don't know. You can argue. People keep telling me there's a few DC comics that are actually not too bad and whatever. Probably. Here's Brothers of the Spear. Looks like I only have one copy of Brothers of the Spear. It must have been a comic that just didn't appeal to me because, see, they don't have dinosaurs like in Turok. They just have elephants. I guess that's what happened there. Here's Buck Rogers. They had, I think this is the only issue that Gold Key put out of Buck Rogers, and I think this is right. This is because the Batman TV show was so popular. I think Gold Key said, let's try to get whatever old heroes aren't signed up to any comic book company, and let's bring them in. Let's see if I'm not wrong, right. Where? Oh, I think I saw some reading glasses back here. Am I correct? No, we're not watching him. Don't listen to that. Okay, look at they're hideous. I got them at a dollar store. Sorry. No, I'm wrong. This is 1964. Anyway, they tried to bring this back. It's a really cool cover. It doesn't look like the traditional Buck Rogers art inside. It looks like, but it's okay. You know, actually, it's not too bad. You know, what is this? This is Jesse Marsh. I recognize his style. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's actually pretty good. This is, but Buck Rogers. This is based on the old comic strip. Later, Gold Key, in the very last death throes of Gold Key, when they lost pretty much everything. They were able to get the rights, the license to do Buck Rogers in the 25th Century based on the TV series. And this is in the very last days of Gold Key being a thing on the newsstands. So, oh, there's the wonderful Sea Monkeys ad. Look at these. These are flip-its. You can flip them and they land on their feet. See, they have an illustration of how it works. What a marvelous toy. Just what you've always wanted. I bet that could compete with the Atari 2600, or having scissors shaped like your favorite cartoon characters. That'll be just as much fun as playing with an Atari 2600. Oh, that's cool. You don't see Casper Hostess fruit pie ads very often. Of course, Casper's from Harvey Comics, and you know they're the enemy inside. But that's all right. Oh, that's a very wordy opening page. I was very annoyed by this robot named Tweaky. I love Mel Blanc, but it was just a very annoying voice they gave to this robot. Plus the fact that the design of the robot's head is very unfortunately laughable. We won't get into why. But it had this weird electronic stutter. Beady, 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 beady. Yeah, look. It was horrible. It's just as, I don't know, who was it that liked Max Headroom, that had that same stupid electronic stutter? I hated Max Headroom. People said, but it was a really nice science fiction TV series they had. Please. You can get your Sean Cassidy jacket. Yeah, this is... See, the world was getting to be horrible at this time period. Look at that. Who would wear patches like that? You could still get a skull flashlight. You know, the world hadn't completely gone horrible. But, yeah, I don't know. This series, they tried tweaking it in the last year and bringing in a character like a hawk guy, like a guy with this kind of half bird or something that was a warrior. And they thought, we'll bring this character in and we'll save this show that had become too silly. I mean, the guy that played, what was his name, Gil Gerard, he was perfectly okay Buck Rogers. And then Erin Gray, I think was her name. Although here they're drawing her as a blonde. I remember her being kind of more of a brunette. She was beautiful. She was fine. Just the show reeked of disco, the disco era, and it was too silly, and that robot annoyed me. And I wish they'd just gone with not tried to imitate the Star Wars aesthetic, but tried to make it look like